The last feature of natural law theory that we're going to explore is called the doctrine of double effect. It's a kind of thinking tool, a set of principles that will allow the natural law theorists to sometimes identify what kinds of actions are morally permissible, morally impermissible. The doctrine of double effect says this: performing a good action may be permissible even if it has bad effects. Okay? But performing a bad action for the purpose of achieving good effects is never morally permissible. All right, so what does that mean? Well, think back to the trolley dilemmas that we were exploring earlier. We had a couple of different situations here. One of those situations was where the trolley's coming down the track, and unless something changes, it's diverting onto this track with the 5 workers, and it's going to run over and kill all of them. But we have the potential to pull this lever out here and divert the train onto a different track away from those 5 workers. And the doctrine of double effect is likely to indicate that this action is actually morally permissible, even though it results in the death of this worker, this single worker, on the track that we've diverted the trolley onto. That can that be? Because the natural law theorist is going to say this. Well, the natural law theorist is going to say a couple of things. One is they're going to say pulling that lever, diverting trains onto different tracks, it's not an inherently moral action. So sort of like pulling levers is like painting bedrooms or something along those lines. It's not something that has inherent moral properties to it. Yes, it sucks that pulling that lever has the consequence of killing this worker on the track who wouldn't have otherwise been killed. But, this is the important part, we're not using the maiming or the death of this single worker here as a tool to create the good effect of saving these 5. There's no connection between this person dying and these people being saved. We're not using this person and his life or his body as a way of saving these 5. It's just that his life he's either maimed or killed because we took this action of pulling the lever and diverting the train away from these 5 workers. So it's a sucky consequence, but we're not using the sucky consequence as a tool or as an instrument to save those 5 workers. But in this scenario, natural law theorists is likely going to take a different approach. Here we are, we're standing on this bridge over the trolley tracks, and we're standing behind this very large gentleman who's decided to teeter on the edge of this bridge, and now we have the choice of pushing him off of this bridge onto the track with the hope that the train is going to hit him, and it's either going to maim or kill him, and that's going to cause the train to not run over those 5 workers. And the natural law theorist is going to say, okay, this is a different scenario. This is not lever pulling. This is shoving a human being off of a bridge. And you're not shoving the human being off of this bridge to benefit them. You're shoving this human being off the bridge to use their body, their life, as a tool to save these 5 people. And that's not morally permissible, the natural law theorist might say. So the doctrine of double effect has these 4 requirements to determine whether or not a particular action is morally permissible. The action is inherently morally good or neutral. And we make this determination without regard for the consequences of the action. Okay, so we look at the one dilemma, trolley dilemma, where we pull the lever. Is there anything inherently morally good or morally bad about lever pulling? No, it seems to be otherwise a morally neutral act. But shoving a person off of a bridge to not somehow benefit that person, that doesn't seem to be morally neutral, and it certainly doesn't seem to be morally good. So we would fail on that requirement. Any bad effects are not used to produce good effects. Pushing this guy off the bridge probably fails at this requirement as well, because the bad effect of pushing him off the bridge is that he's maimed or killed. And it's that maiming or killing that's causing the trolley to slow down or stop and not run over the 5 workers. But pulling the lever, it creates the bad effect of this one worker being killed on that train track. But it's not like that person's death, that bad effect, is the instrument that causes those 5 people to not be maimed by the train or not be run over by the train. The intention must always be to bring about good effects. Both dilemmas probably pass on that account. And the good effect must be at least as important as the bad effect. So the classic example that natural law theorists often toss out as a way of illustrating the doctrine of double effect, and they'll say, like, okay, so let's say you're considering an elective abortion. This isn't an abortion that someone needs to have in order to save her life. It's not an abortion that is necessary for some other reason. This is an abortion that a person has decided to have simply because they no longer want to continue with the pregnancy for some reason. Maybe they don't want to have another child come into their family, or they think it's going to be an economic burden on them, or whatever the case may be. We've just decided it's going to be better for me if I terminate this pregnancy now. Okay, so the natural law theorist is going to have a problem with this. They're going to say, look, Abortion is not a morally neutral act, right? And they're probably going to describe how abortions are performed and what results as, what kinds of things are involved in the act of abortion. They're probably also going to say that an elective abortion fails on count 2. Any bad effects are not used to produce good effects. Yeah, the natural law theorist is going to say, you've terminated this pregnancy, you've terminated this life or potential life, however you want to think about it, and that pales in comparison to the good effects that you will reap, and you're actually using the bad effects, right, the termination of this pregnancy, in order to bring about these good effects. Less pressure on my family, less inconvenience in my life. The intention must always be to bring about good effects. We might argue about that. The good effect must be at least as important as the bad effect. And again, a natural law theorist is going to say, I think this fails on that account. The conveniences or whatever benefits you reap from this abortion pale in comparison to the value of the life that was destroyed. Now, natural law theorist is going to say, but if you do something that results in the termination of a pregnancy, and the thing you do is not intended to terminate the pregnancy, this might be morally permissible. So let's say we have someone who's pregnant, who also has serious cancer and needs to undergo chemotherapy in order to save her life. The chemotherapy will have the result of terminating the pregnancy. But the natural law theorist is going to say, but this doesn't necessarily mean that it's morally impermissible to undergo chemotherapy, because even though undergoing the chemotherapy has the bad effect of terminating the pregnancy, it's not like we're using the chemotherapy to terminate the pregnancy, and it's not like we're terminating the pregnancy to eliminate the cancer. Okay, so the natural law theorist is going to say this using of the chemotherapy, which results in the termination of a pregnancy, it might pass the 4 requirements for moral permissibility under the doctrine of double effect.